So you join me here today on River Don at Dennerby, and there's an up and coming qualifier for me here, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to come. I've not been for a while, so I thought I'd come with sort of an open-minded approach. So what I've done is I've set a feeder line up for like 3/4 of the way, which I've used a 12-foot braid special there, and I'm hoping to catch skimmers on that. So on that line, I'm going to start on this line, hopefully catch a few skimmers on that, but then I've balled it on a pole line and I'm going to loose feed casters, and then I've set 2 pole rigs up for now, just to sort of see and feel my way in. And the 2 pole rigs I've set up, they'll do completely different jobs, so I'll get a reading for what it's actually going to be like. So it's quite a low and clear river. There's still a bit of flow here because it's one of the areas with a bit more flow here, but the 2 rigs I've set up a 3 gram flat float where I can just inch it through at probably a third or half the pace of the river, over the top of my ground bait. I'm not a massive fan of static on a pole here, so I won't go for a big flat float and go static, because I think that if static is the best approach, then a feeder will dominate. And then my other pole rig is a 2 gram round body float with a long line above, where if it is more roach and they're a bit harder to catch off of my bait, then you'll see with my long line, I can search right down my peg, where if it's a bit harder, that's where they usually hang. So the 2 pole rigs will cover my roach fishing. I might catch the odd skimmer inching it through a bit slower, but I think if it's going to be a skimmer day, on this feeder is going to be how you're going to catch them. So with that in mind, I've gone more roach orientated on the pole. So like I said, we started on feeder. We'll have a short chuck on this, see what happens. And if nothing prevails on that, then I'll be quick to go on my pole line and sort of put some roach in net. So we'll see how we go on, and we'll keep you updated. So first setup today is my feeder rod, and I've got a 12-foot braid special to a 450 compact. And reason we're only chucking short, reason I've gone for 12-foot, obviously you can see there's some grasses and stuff in front, so if I hook a better fish, the only place I think I'll probably lose it would be short. So that extra length gives me a bit more control. It's still a soft rod, it's only a 50 gram casting weight, so it's perfect for casting like this setup here. I've just got a 20 gram Nisa on, and I've got 010 braid on, and then I've just got half a metre of that's 030, and it's just sort of a stiff part to stop tangles in my rig. And on that I've just got a twizzled loop, and then two float stops onto a snap swivel, and then just a 60 centimetre hook length for that's 011 fluorocarbon to a 16 sphere match. So just a nice light setup for skimmers. I don't think it needs to be anything too robust, you know. It's strong fluorocarbon, and on a soft rod I don't expect to get bust on 011, so hopefully that light line will give me a few more bites. And then from my pole, next rig I've got a 4 gram flat float, so I've just got 3.5 gram Olivet, and then a bulk of number 8s there, and then I've just got 3 number 8 droppers below that, like 6 inch apart. Then I've just got an 8 inch hook length. I've just fished that 4 inch over depth. Then I can just sort of, a bit of both. I can sort of hold it dead still, or I can just inch it through the peg. So I can adjust that, so I can lay maybe just a couple of inch on bottom. But like I said, this is nice for a more static presentation. And then the third rig is a 2 gram running rig, and I've got an higher bulk this time, probably 2.5, maybe nearly 3 foot front hook. That's 2 gram width, so that's got 1.5 gram Olivet, and then it's just got number 9s tapered and just getting a bit further apart near the hook, so just 6 inch apart on the last couple near the hook. Then I've got an 8 inch hook length. I just fish that just an inch on bottom and then just try and run that through, let it go. And that offers like a presentation then where it's a more natural flow, so I'm running that at pace at river. So in my feeder I've got a static presentation, then I've got my flat float on my pole where I can sort of inch it nice and steady, and then my third rig is a runner just to run it at them, and out of the 3 then I sort of can work out what's best with 3 different types of presentation. So I'll talk you through my bait choices, and you'll see that they complement the species I'm trying to catch on each line. So on a long pole I'm going to ball some ground bait, and this is river and black roach. So there's no fish meal in that, so I don't want to be too selective with that. So I'm looking to just catch anything on that, and I've got some casters and some hemp, which hopefully is what I'm just going to feed. So I've not been for a while, and it's a low clear river, so we don't know obviously how it's going to fish. So if it is a bit harder, then I've got to back up a feeding hemp and bronze maggots. But I'm going to try and be positive and feed casters, because I'm always looking for a way to be positive. And then on my feeder line I've got a fish meal mixer, F1 and maggot meal fish meal, and then I've got some dendrobinas to chop, some dead red maggots, and then just some red worms for the hook. So with that I'm not worried about the fish meal content, because I'm only looking to catch skimmers on that. So hopefully that they will catch a few skimmers, but if we don't, we've got a nice mix here that's not going to be selective, and we're going to put a few fish in that if it's a bit harder. So we'll jump on box and see what happens. So as I touched on earlier, I've got an up and coming qualifier here, and it's not somewhere that I fish regular, but this time last year I fished a qualifier here, and usually it's skimmer dominated on a feeder, but there is times where if the skimmers just switch off, you need to cover other bases. So with that in mind, my approach today will sort of give me that reading and give me that chance to learn a bit. So if it were a skimmer match, then I probably wouldn't learn a lot today. I'd just sit on a feeder and catch skimmers, which isn't why I've come. So whether I do or I don't catch some skimmers on feeder, I'll still be wanting to come on pole and sort of learn the best ways of catching roach, because if it is one of them days come the weekend where the skimmers decide not to feed, then at least I've got a good chance of being on the right tactics to catch enough roach to qualify. So if I were to ignore skimmers and fish for roach but fish it wrong, I won't catch enough. So like I say, I'm going to have a short session on feeder, but whether I catch or not, I'm going to be quick to come off it and to have a feel on the pole line and sort of try and fine tune that for the weekend. So it'll be interesting to see actually which of the 2 rigs picks up the better fish, or if any fish at all. So like I say, it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we progress. So we've hooked his first fish on feeder, which feels like a skimmer, but we've been fishing probably 25 minutes now, and like I said earlier, it'd be nice to catch a net full as a skimmer. It'd be nice to catch a net full of skimmers, but I also want to get a feel on pole, and I reckon that the best window is going to be early on my pole. So now I've caught this, I'll maybe have another chuck, just to see if I can catch another, but don't just want to spend all my time on the feeder, because I just feel like I'm not going to learn a lot. So if it's not a feeder day at the weekend, then I don't want to spend all my time on fishing a feeder. So nice fish. So a nice start, but keep an open mind and obviously cover all bases, so I don't just want to sit and fish for skimmers, but obviously in a match this is a brilliant start. So we'll have another chuck on the feeder, see if we can catch another one of them. I've changed to a lighter feeder and a bit smaller hook, and I thought, well, I'll just see what I can catch on that lighter gear. And as soon as I've made them changes, caught a £3 skimmer. So I'm not saying there's anything in what I've just changed there and then, but little changes like that can sometimes make a big difference. So I had an ounce feeder on, a 28 gram feeder, and I was getting little rattles, but I couldn't like produce a bite. As soon as I changed to a smaller feeder, one, I'm being able to hook my smaller fish now because the dislodging feeder are hooking themselves. But two, I've obviously just put a £3 skimmer in it. So, like I said, just be open-minded, and them little changes can sometimes just make big differences. So there's times where you maybe fish for big fish and can't catch them, scale down for smaller fish, then catch your big fish. Sometimes them bigger fish just need to be fished for a little bit cuter. So it's just something to think about in your fishing. So obviously, because I'm trying to use today's session as sort of practice for a match, I've been fishing like 40 minutes on feeder, and I've had obviously a £3 skimmer, bream, whatever you want to call it, and a couple of little perch, but I'm not really getting any indications. And so my thought process in a match would be, what is going on my pole line? So I could sit on this, I've had a decent start, I could sit on this and think, yeah, I might catch 2 or 3 more, but I might not. So if I neglect my pole line, I've no idea now. I've been flicking some casters and empov at top, but I've no idea if I'm feeding the right amount, whether it's full of fish there or whether there's no fish there. So I'm going to come off the feeder and I'm going to have a little look on pole, and if it's good, at least I know I can up my bait. If it's not so good, I can then cut down a little bit of my bait. But if it's good, I'll probably carry on and put some fish in there. If it's not so good, it's not an issue. I just come back and go back on my feeder and try and catch another skimmer. But by making that early decision, where a lot of people would probably sit on a feeder thinking I might catch 10 or 20 skimmers, that just doesn't normally happen. 2 or 3 skimmers will be really good. So I've made the decision now to sort of come off of this, have a quick look. I'm going to start on my flat float where I can inch it over my bait. Because I bored that in, expect the bigger fish early on its session to sit over my bait early with a bit of confidence. So we'll have a look on pole and we'll see what happens. So this is first drop in, and nice little hybrid. A little hybrid or a little skimmer? Little hybrid. That's a nice start. So it seems like there's a few fish there. I had a couple of indications before that. Usually with these fish, they prefer bait being slowed down a bit, whereas you roach like that running rig. So just started on a single red maggot, and like I said, I've just been feeding emp and casters. I don't want to feed maggots and fill my peg full of tiny fish, so I want to try and keep being as positive as I can. And if it is roach fishing, I'd hope to catch my roach on the caster or red maggot over the top of my casters. But like I say, if it's not so good, then I will introduce maggots. But I'm always looking to try and be as positive as I can on whatever method I fish. And I know if I feed maggots, a lot of small fish are going to try and intercept them on the way down. But I'm gonna start with a maggot on hook, but I'll be quick to turn to casters if I do start catching tiny little fish, because I want to try and keep the stamp as big as I can. So I've gone in on my flat float to start with, over the ground bait I bored in at the start, and I've caught a few hybrids and a couple of nice perch on it, but I'm getting a lot of little indications and I just don't feel like it's right. I think the river's got a couple of locks that come into this, and the river's actually slowed down a tiny bit since we first came. And I think maybe a round-bodied, bigger float would have been nicer just to inch through now that flow's settled down. And this rig just doesn't feel right at the minute. So although I'm catching a few fish on it, I'm always looking to see what's going to be best. So I'm going to pick my running rig up. And I've only had the one roach and I expect to catch more roach. So we'll pick that up and see what's happening. But at least we're getting a few bites. But it's nice to be quick to rink changes, and you sort of see your differences a bit quicker then. So the other rig is on a top 5 because I'm keeping that a lot more static, and I'm not sort of searching down the peg. I'm looking to fish over that ground bait. And like I say, I've got 15 foot of depth maybe. But this has probably got 10 foot of line above the float, so this will enable me to search further down peg, but I'll not really hold this rig back. So once this rig goes in water, I'm just simply going to let it run at pace at river. So we'll have a quick drop on this rig, see what happens, and then we'll make a decision from there. So just thought I'd do just a bit of a summary today and sort of what we can take from it. Started on a feeder and had a skimmer, £3, £3.5, and a couple of little roach and perch. But to be honest, my aim was today I know that if they catch skimmers here, they catch them on a feeder. My aim was to come on a pole and just sort of see what sort of weight you can catch on a pole. If it's one of them days where you draw an area where there ain't loads of skimmers, then you're not going to be very productive if you sit for no bites on a feeder. So like I said, we've had some ground bait on pole, and we've tried 2 different sort of forms of presentation. So a 4 gram flat float, which we've inched over static, which were all right at the start, but missed quite a few bites. And then as soon as we swapped to lighter rig, miles better for smaller fish, but there's loads of bleak in river at the minute. So feeding wise, it's sort of been a bit of an headache. Whereas I'd like to feed bronze maggots and fish a single maggot and catch roach, just haven't been able to do that. Every time I put a single maggot on, I catch a bleak. So I've ended up fishing double maggot and just feeding hemp. So I've literally had to cut sort of my main baits out and just concentrate on feeding hemp. But it's been an interesting day, and it's close between can you catch enough weight of small fish to compete with 2 or 3 skimmers, because it's not an area, we're not sat in an area where you're going to catch 10 skimmers here. If you catch them here, you might catch 2 or 3. So it's a close battle between whether you're better off sitting on a feeder or working your pole line. But I think if we hadn't have had the trouble with bleak, we definitely would have doubled the amount we've caught, because you could have fed and presented it a bit nicer. But I mean, it's been an interesting session. I'm glad we've come, and it's sort of put me in good stead for, like I said, my up and coming match. So I hope you've learnt a bit. I've definitely learnt a bit, and like I say, every time we go fishing, it's something a bit different. And today's definitely thrown a spanner in works. So it's been a good day.